honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I'm pleased to rise in this chamber, be it from my office, to help participate in an important debate on Canadian privacy. It's an act to amend the Consumer Privacy Protection Act and the Personal Information and Data Protection and Tribunal Act, and also to make consequential related amendments to other acts, because it is a fairly complicated subject we're dealing with, but it's one that's been warranted for many, many years. Madam Speaker, I think the first thing to note is New Democrats, we have been calling for a modernization of our privacy laws and our consumer protection laws for about a decade. Most recently, our efforts have resulted in a digital Bill of Rights discussion across Canada, where we took the forefront and pushed hard to have some of these rights discussed not only in the public forum, but also in the chambers of Parliament. We've witnessed the world move on. We've seen the Privacy Commissioner identified Canada as a backwater when it comes to protecting privacy and the capabilities in a modern world. With COVID-19, we see further online activity amongst Canadians and further vulnerabilities from not only just individuals, our families, our schools, our businesses, and even our own Parliament. And Madam Speaker, for New Democrats, it's a different position than other political parties. As New Democrats, we believe that your human rights are connected to your digital rights. With that said, Madam Speaker, it's clear that we believe that your online presence and your digital footprint that you leave in the wake of the business that you have to do is just as important as your physical enshrined rights as a human being. Madam Speaker, when we look at what's taking place even with COVID and say, for example, just the ability to participate online, we've seen the failings of 2 decades of Liberals and Conservatives to connect Canadians, all the way from Maxime Bernier's program launched as a Conservative minister to most recently where we're struggling and scrambling to get Canadians connected. And Madam Speaker, one of the things that we also talk about as New Democrats is the affordability of being able to participate in this democracy, not only just in terms of your participation as an individual on a regular social basis, but as governments have moved more and more services away from bricks and mortar and more online, we've seen the exposure of Canadian privacy. And we've seen that even just within government resources and government sources themselves, everything from social insurance numbers to other types of breaches that have taken place, but also too in the private sector, Madam Speaker. And often in the private sector, Canada has lagged behind, not only just in terms of oversight, but also the punishment of those that take advantage and predicate on people in the new digital age. That's why in our Digital Bill of Rights that we have presented more than 2 years ago, we talked about not only just your personal data being protected, but also how you are being manipulated through the actual services that are provided online. That comes everything from the philosophy that we've had for years and years and is net neutrality. But also, Madam Speaker, with this new bill coming up, I'm going to highlight a few new problems that can actually derail that type of a philosophy and can actually stream Canadians to more vulnerabilities. With regards to this bill, there's all kinds of examples that we can look at how Canadians have been abused, whether it's been through Yahoo, Ticketmaster, Marriott, Equifax, the list goes on and on, to most recently and most actually, I guess, a heightened one that created a lot of attention across the world was Facebook, the outright manipulation of your personal data and basically being used as a pawn without not even knowing what your rights were and being protected from it. Again, Madam Speaker, Canada's laws right now don't allow our Privacy Commissioner to actually come down hard on some of these giants. And these governments that we've had in the past have been too close with the web giants in the past. They're not allowing the Canadians to have the proper recourse when their data breaches have taken place. One of the things that's interesting about this bill, Madam Speaker, as well, too, and when we talk Sorry, Madam Speaker, my screen is identifying to unmute, so I don't know if that's a problem.
Actually, I think so. So I think that the member can start again. Not from the beginning.
No. I wouldn't do that to anybody. Yeah. So one of the things, Madam Speaker, is the Personal Information Data Protection Tribunal that's being presented by this government in this bill creates a number of different potential false promises for accountability. First and foremost, Madam Speaker, it has a low threshold of involvement of those that will be appointed to the tribunal. So first of all, you have to get past the notion that these types of political appointments are going to be free and clear of all political and business type leverages used to actually select the tribunal. Second of all, you're going to have to assume the tribunal can be fair, quick, and actually just in its case. And then thirdly, Madam Speaker, they have baked in problems with regards to the role of the tribunal that create some concerns. The first and foremost is the tribunal can actually overturn the privacy commissioner in many respects, and it would also go to a judicial process which could take years and years to actually settle cases that actually may no longer be relevant to Canadians. We also see, Madam Speaker, that there's a low threshold for the inclusion of some of the actual appointments for those things. There's not a requirement for a superior judge, and there's only actually can only have one judge is allowed to be actually up to maybe a 1 to 3 member panel or a 1 to 6 member panel. These are things that we need to have fixed. One of the things I want to explore more, Madam Speaker, is more powers of the Privacy Commissioner. The Privacy Commissioner has been very clear of asking for more resources and more supports over the last number of years to be able to deal with the privacy breaches that we've had, and also to bring in more accountability. And I would add, Madam Speaker, that it's in our business interest, not only just our individual interests as individuals and our families and all the institutions that we have, but in business interests by having a clear process so that the bad actors that are in this environment that are doing the harm to Canadians and to other businesses are not rewarded. One of the things I'm most proud of accomplishing as a member of Parliament was ending the tax deductibility of corporate fines and penalties. That's about 15 years ago, Madam Speaker. And before, in the past, if you were a business and you were caught illegally doing something, you were able to actually write off part of that government fine as a business-related expense. I was able to champion the change for that took place so that this way, Madam Speaker, businesses that were actually doing illegal activity and influencing competition were using it as a loss leader. So they would essentially, Madam Speaker, get millions of dollars of fines and penalties, everything from drug companies to those with environmental fines and penalties, and then they would apply for that money back at tax time, and it would be a way of them actually undercutting the competition that's doing the right thing. And that's what I'm concerned about with this particular tribunal panel, Madam Speaker, as it will have the capability to influence and actually bring some market stability to some degree with regards to penalties and fines to the bad actors. If it does not work right, if it's not seen as credible, and if it does not flow the way it should, then it can simply be an encouragement for some of those to do the breaches, to be sloppy with personal information, to be disrespectful, and also to be manipulative, to take information from Canadians, steer them to different purchases, to different activity, expose them, and then actually beat some of the competition. And Madam Speaker, with some of the young entrepreneurs that we have that have to go up against some of these established giants, it's very difficult to get a toehold. There's a number of factors that are in place here, even in our general market economy, for young people and entrepreneurs to get busy and to be able to compete. One most recently, Madam Speaker, is in the retail sector, where they're actually having to charge extra to get floor space in the real world. And I can tell you, Madam Speaker, Amazon and other types of players have also used manipulative practices to actually steer consumers to particular products and services from preferred customers. And so that defeats our philosophy of net neutrality. And again, Madam Speaker, it could also direct you and your family to making purchases or viewing activity with the time that you have into different market conditions, as opposed to actually exploring in a free and open internet society. One of the things as well, too, Madam Speaker, is with regards to the actual oversight with this now is Canadian federal political parties are exempt from this oversight. We don't understand why the Liberals would allow this to take place. It should be clear and proper that your data, their personal information, would be open and accountable in political parties as well. And so we will be looking at amendments to this particular activity because it's something that we still strongly believe should be accountable. To bring faith and to bring accountability to our democracy requires transparency. And we have seen the sensationalism that's taken place for political advertising in the last number of campaigns, favoritism that has been seen online. We also have seen giant data assembly that's taken place that can manipulate voting and also steering people to different discussion points. So with that, we think that your personal privacy information collected by political parties should also be above and strong and also clear, because this way there's going to be more faith in the information that you're actually dispelling to political parties. And more importantly, Madam Speaker, that our democracy is going to be strengthened by privacy protection, not weakened or exempted with regards to the model that's being presented by the government right now. We also, Madam Speaker, more technical, want to continue to have commercial activity defined and currently under PIPEDA. Again, this is more related to the business section aspect for it and fair and open transparency. We also want to, Madam Speaker, deal with a particular issue with regards to algorithmic transparency. And the algorithms right now, Madam Speaker, can help direct purchasing, can help direct your activity, can manipulate yourself, and it's going to get stronger because artificial intelligence is being introduced more and more into society, and with regards to all our products and services, even from search engines to the types of purchasing that you've been doing with different types of corporations, and a number of other different activities that are taking place for predictability. It's important that there actually is going to be an accountability and oversight for that. Madam Speaker, there's been a number of different things that have been going on with regards to Canadians, with regards to their privacy. It's no doubt that there's going to be more challenges with this bill. We want to fall back to a number of different structures that take place with regards to this. Again, as New Democrats, our Digital Bill of Rights was something that we championed for many, many years, and I want to highlight a few things that are important for that, because if we cannot have a fair and open, just society with regards to our digital footprint, we believe our democracy is threatened, our economy is threatened, and more importantly, even investments into this country will be threatened because it will not have the same oversight that Europe has. It will not have the same oversight that the United States has. Those are things that are very important to make sure that investment is going to take place in Canada. It's important to regulate to note that if we are going to be working towards having a number of different things like access to telecommunication services all across Canada, and we're investing this, when you think about the amount of billions of dollars that have been spent on this, and the more that's coming, is that we want this to be done right and proper, especially with COVID-19. So what I refer to specifically with regards to that, Madam Speaker, is that over the years, the Canadian people, as we've gone to more online services, and we've invested in this, we've had opportunities. So when we think about how we use this space for ourselves, whether it be commercial activity, entertainment, or business, we sell off the spectrum. So the spectrum is what is the infrastructure that you can use. It's above us. It's the radio and the capacity to move. Most recently, 5G. We're going to see a spectrum auction where the government has actually accumulated over $22 billion. So in the past 20 years, $22 billion of revenue have come into the actual public coffers with regards to selling off spectrum auctions. And Madam Speaker, we've seen a patchwork of activity take place all across this country. I mentioned previously Maxime Bernier with the Conservatives, and most recently with the Liberals, several plans that have emerged that are more of a hodgepodge of type of an applications, and one program after the next is sought out there, but they're massive subsidizations as well that we're providing for those markets, billions of dollars. Even the CRTC has a fund. So I could list off a series of them, Madam Speaker, but the point being, if we're going to all this trouble and this investment to create a society space that is for our digital world and our digital economy, and we're investing this heavily on it, then we need to do it right, especially with the geography of Canada that is so large. It can be actually one of the things that is a challenge, but given our population size and given the fact that we have density of populations along the border and other places, we can actually turn this into an advantage for business investment as well, too. But again, Madam Speaker, we as New Democrats believe this is part of our human rights in terms of how you're treated online, everything from the accountability for the companies with regards to cyber cyberbullying, your privacy protection, and all those things, your speeds and affordability, Madam Speaker, all those things combine together. Because if you do not have this type of an approach as a philosophical one, I think we leave ourselves open to basically having more winners and losers. It would be no different than having lost educational opportunities for people and a requirement for government to come in and actually do the right thing here, and that is to make things actually more affordable. I mentioned with regards of our concentrations of our populations, Madam Speaker, and I do think it's important that we tie this bill in as we expand finally more to rural and to remote locations, is the security and the accountability for that information. We've talked a lot about preserving different cultures and providing business opportunities for areas that have been weakened because of their geography or their lack of connectivity to large pieces of populations. But if we don't provide a rules-based system in place that allows them to compete fairly, then they will fall to the wayside. And so what I mean specifically for that, Madam Speaker, is that you are going to have a number of different opportunities here for smaller businesses to evolve, some scale-ups to take place, some communities that can actually have some empowerment and involvement and getting to new markets and keeping the community stronger and together. But if it's not done in a way that your online privacy and your protection in your businesses can compete in a fair way, then it's going to be one that's going to actually be lost. And Madam Speaker, and that's one of the concerns that we have, I think, in general, not only just with regards to ourselves as a country, but also the rest of the world with some of the web giants, is the consolidation of services and the consolidation of how the online services are used. In Canada here, our competition has not been the strongest at some points, but there is an opportunity, Madam Speaker, as we do this, and this is why this legislation is so important. With the spectrum auction coming up right now, the Democrats have argued that instead of actually charging just the much money we can from the different telcos coming in and then seeing how things go, that results in what we have right now. We have less competition, and then we have, Madam Speaker, higher prices, and prices that, quite frankly, limit people's participation in the digital world in itself. And that's one of the concerns that we have. And so what we've suggested is turn the spectrum auction around, like many other countries have done, and use it as a way to connect at lower costs by putting out expectations like an RFP type model, so that actually when the bidding comes in, we may get a little bit less money coming in at the front door, but the expectations are going to be higher and the requirements to connect rural or remote communities will be there, or they use it or they lose it. And that's one of the things that we believe could be a real benefit to moving along the different programs. So, Madam Speaker, basically what we have now is a series of programs out there where communities almost have to go on bended knee to be able to get access, to get supports, to actually lower the pricing points to make things more competitive and make things more attractive. Whereas what our model is doing is having a reversal role and having the business community already have in it the expectation that the spectrum's less, but also the time frames to connect Canadians is high, and the expectation that they use it or lose it for those things happen relatively quick. In fact, industry has indicated the NDP plan could take place and connect Canada all within 4 years, 98% in 3 years, and the last little part in the last year, because it's more difficult for some different locations. Why this is important, Mr. Speaker, and why it is critical is this law is going to lay out the framework for some of how that activity takes place. And that's one of the reasons that we believe this tribunal is one of the more interesting curiosities. There'll be other things to talk about with regards to it. But if we spend all this money, time, and public policy, and then we don't get it right, and we have a weak, and we have an irresponsible approach to oversight and making sure that Canada doesn't have problems with regards to this, it's going to create a skew already even in the public policy laws that we have. And I fear, Mr. Speaker, that we are going to have this bill in its current context, if it doesn't sharpen up on those points, create a skewed market for some years to come. Parliament most likely will not deal with this again anytime soon. It's been far too long right now, and it's taken far too long to get to this point. And we have to get this through a minority parliament, and we have to get it through the Senate, and we have to get it through signed off by the Prime Minister at the end of the day. And that's going to take some time and some commitment. You have that from New Democrats. We want to improve the bill. We want to make sure it's stronger. But if we don't get these points right, we're going to undermine things. And that's why when we think about how important this is with our current public policy and our resources, everybody out there has been concerned about COVID-19 and the effects upon the broadband and the experience for education, involvement, and your commitment. And again, to wrap up, Mr. Speaker, the difference for New Democrats is that we believe your human rights and your digital rights are enshrined just like your physical rights. As we move to this type of engagement, as we see hybrids take place even within workplaces and schools and other types of activity, this bill is a step forward, but it needs to be strengthened, and you can count on us to do that. That's our intent, to make Parliament work, but more importantly is to make sure that we have laws that are going to work and protect Canadians. And I appreciate the opportunity to address these this morning.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank my friend for his intervention. I do want to pick up with respect to the enforcement mechanism that's in there with the establishment of a new tribunal that will be accessible and that will be able to impose significant fines on those who violate the Act. And then I just want to take issue with appointments. I know as a government, since the time we took over, we put in a very robust appointment process that ensures that it's merit-based and it also represents the breadth of this country. And I wanted to see if my friend could comment on what specific issues he has with such an accessible tribunal that I think is warranted in this situation.
Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate the question, and it's fair. I believe that not all political appointments, and in fact, the vast majority, overwhelmingly, even when controversial ones have popped up, have been good people doing good things for Canadians. What it does, though, is it lends itself, that type of an appointment process, to some degrees of political meddling, corruption, and also influence from the outside as well, too. That's I've been in Ottawa for almost 19 years now, and I've seen a number of different stories played out over the years that give me concern. And so that's, I think, a legitimate concern in this bill. And it also can change with governments that actually do the appointment process. So that is something that is of concern and I think worth talking about. Now, with regards to who's on those committees and those tribunals, it's the length of time it could go through, and then, Mr. Speaker, the types of people on it. It's only one of 3 to 6 tribunal members, and only one has to have privacy law experience. That's one specific example of my concern there, because these are very technical things to deal with.
Questions and comments? The Honourable Member for Battle River Crowfoot.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the Honourable Member's speech and some of the context that he has provided for this bill. Now, certainly one of the concerns that I have, being from a large rural constituency, is the interplay that this bill and the effect that it may have on rural Canada, and specifically small and medium-sized enterprises within rural and remote parts of Canada. I'm wondering if this member would have comments on that and the effects that rural Canada may expect to see from this bill. Thank you.
The Honourable Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the question. I think it is. It's one of the key components of really what we need to do to get it right, because as we're expanding into rural and remote Canada, we want to make sure there's even more confidence for personal protection of privacy. And then also there's a little bit of a cultural change in the sense that, so many of us in urban centers that have had access to high speed and other types of services and have been abused are used to some of that abuse, whereas we want to bake in protection from Canadians for small and medium-sized enterprises right now. And again, there's a number of different things, and net neutrality is a good example, but there's also the algorithms and how they actually direct traffic, and they direct different businesses in different ways. And when we see that there's abuse taking place, that can also come at the expense of small and medium-sized businesses. So those are some of the changes that we're looking for, is greater accountability to those formats, because people really put their whole life and their efforts into small business. It's hard enough as it is before even COVID-19. With COVID-19, it's even worse. And then they're paying for this. They're paying for the connections to be able to compete. So, Mr. Speaker, those are things that we need to bring to account, is the algorithms in this as well.
Questions and comments? Question commentaire. The honourable member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank my colleague for his comments. He is a leader within our caucus, certainly, and on this file is very well informed and very knowledgeable about this very complex issue. As he knows, I've been working on the Heritage Committee, and we've also been looking at Facebook and the web giants, and I guess that cozy relationship that the Liberals have with the web giants. We've seen that lobbying over the last few years has tripled since the Liberals became the government. And I'm just wondering, in terms of privacy and personal privacy, if the member could talk a little bit about what he would like to see improved in this bill to make sure that cozy relationship is not, it does not get any sort of prevalence, I guess.
The honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank the member from Edmonton Strathcona for her hard work on this, and also reinforcing the protection and the strengthening of the Privacy Commissioner. I think that office has done really wonders for this country. I've seen four Privacy Commissioners in my tenure in Parliament, and they have all been strong. I haven't always agreed with some of their decisions, but they certainly have been at the forefront of accountability and public policy in pushing for greater protection for Canadians. The U.S. does not have this. This is one of our really strength moments that we have as a country in a structure. So the member is absolutely correct, and we need to make sure the Privacy Commissioner's office is strengthened, reinforced, and remained independent, because it has been an asset, not only just for personal information, but also for our businesses across this countray.
Questions and comments, and we'll go by video conference to the honourable member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And my honourable colleague for Windsor West, thank you for your detailed assessment of C-11. First opportunity for me to speak to the bill, certainly plan to vote for it at second reading to get to committee. An amendment I hope to pursue at committee is an issue that the honourable member discussed, and that is getting the PIPEDA framework in Canada privacy to apply to political parties. Here in British Columbia, at the provincial level, political parties have to meet privacy requirements. I commend the member for raising it early in debate and ask if the New Democratic Party will also amendments in committee.
Member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the question. Yes, New Democrats support these amendments, and we will be proposing several. There's no doubt about it. And I would actually like to acknowledge that British Columbia's privacy protection for decades actually has been recognized across North America and different parts of the world. So there's no doubt that British Columbia will provide some good opportunity for some lessons to strengthen our own Privacy Commissioner as well, too. That's key, Mr. Speaker. New Democrats support these changes. We have amendments prepared already. We'll be adding more amendments. We got to get this right. There's only going to be one chance at this in the near future as we're building out and we're actually doing things more online than before. But we have to enshrine the philosophy that your human rights are connected here. If we do not enshrine the human rights are connected with regard to this, your digital rights are like your physical rights, then we will be lost. And we can't do that. We have to win.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to ask the member for further comments in regards to the tribunal, because that is a critical component here. And the members expressed great concern in terms of the timeliness of decisions being made by the tribunal. And I'm wondering if he could just provide some further thoughts in terms of how it is that he believes that that issue could be best addressed. And I'm more interested, as opposed to focusing his attention on the appointments, but are there mechanisms that he could see be put into place that would ensure a more timely response to tribunals once issues have been raised?
Honourable member for Windsor West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thanks for the question. Yes, one of the things that the tribunal will be subject to is actually just a review, and it could be challenged. So the challenge that we're going to be faced with is decisions could be pushed off down the line. So say, for example, Mr. Speaker, the CRTC, it could take a long time for CRTC decisions to come back, and it's one of the most frustrating things. And I give credit to our incumbents where they need to be getting credit is that they've actually had to deal with the broken system of the CRTC, not not having the resources and the capabilities to get back on timely matters. So the tribunal is going to be critical for that. Having judicial experience added to it that's stronger than was currently there right now, and also making sure that maybe some of the powers that they have can't be overseen or overturn the privacy commissioner. So those are some of the things I'd like to see advanced in this bill.